In Nigeria, a conflict deadlier than Boko Haram is tearing up the country apart. It's not about terrorism or politics, it's about land, water, and survival. This is the story of Nigeria's herders versus farmers conflict and why it's become one of Africa's most dangerous wars. Nigeria is a country of contrast. In the north, you have arid desert where nomadic farmers have roamed for centuries with their cattle. In the south, you have lush farmlands where communities have grown crops for generations. For hundreds of years, these two groups coexisted peacefully, but today, that peaceful coexistence has exploded into deadly violence. Between 2016 and 18 alone, over 3,600 people were unalived in these clashes. That is more deaths than from the insurgency in the northeast in the same period. So, what went wrong? To understand this conflict, we need to go back to Nigeria's colonial past. The British divided Nigeria into three regions: North, East, and West. The North was ruled indirectly through traditional rulers, giving it more political power, a dynamics that still affects Nigeria today. Then came oil. Discovered in 1956, oil transformed Nigeria's economy, but here is the problem. Agriculture, which employed 70% of the population and contributed 63% of GDP, was suddenly rejected. By 1988, agriculture's contribution had dropped to just 34%. The government focused on oil, abandoning the farmers and herders who fed the nation. This conflict also has ethnic and religious dimensions. Most herders are Fulani people, Muslim pastoralists who migrated to northern Nigeria centuries ago. Most farmers in the affected areas are Christians. This isn't originally a religious conflict, but when violence erupts, these identities become rallying points. On one side, you have the Fulani herders. Over 90% of Nigeria's nomadic herdsmen, they've been moving their cattle along traditional routes for generations, following seasonal patterns. Their lifestyle depends on finding grazing lands and water for their animals. On the other hand are sedentary farmers from various ethnic groups such as the Birom and the Tiv peoples. They cultivate the land, grow crops that feed Nigeria's ever-growing population. Their livelihood depends on protecting their farmlands from being trampled or eaten by cattle. Until recently, conflicts were resolved through negotiations. Village heads would meet, herders would compensate farmers for crops damaged, and life went on. But those days are over. So what's changed? First, climate change. Northern Nigeria is experiencing severe desertification. The Sahara Desert is advancing southwards at 600 meters per year. Rainfall has decreased from 150 days annually to just 120 days in the last 30 years. An area the size of Germany has turned to desert in the last 60 years. Second, poorly planned development. Nigeria's oil wealth funded massive infrastructure projects, including dams that reduced seasonal flooding by 50%. This destroyed traditional grazing lands. Urban development blocked ancient cattle routes. Herders found their traditional paths literally paved over. Third, government failure. In 1964, the government designated 415 grazing reserves. Only 114 were actually established, and most of these were later sold for development. The 1978 Land Use Act made it easier for literate farmers to get land certificates, gradually excluding nomadic herders from their traditional grazing areas. Fourth, the breakdown of security. Cattle rustling by bandits and insurgency in the northeast, porous borders has forced herders to arm themselves. When traditional negotiation fails and your livelihood is under threat, violence becomes the solution. Some armed groups aren't even Nigerians. They come from neighboring countries like Niger, Chad, and Cameroon. Since year 2000, this resource competition has exploded into deadly violence. Instead of negotiating, armed groups now attack villages, unalive farmers, burn houses, and occupy lands. Farmers have formed vigilante groups to fight back. The traditional mediation system has completely collapsed. The numbers are staggering. Amnesty International documented 312 attacks between 2016 and 2018, resulting in at least 3,641 deaths, 406 injuries, 5,000 houses burned, and over 180,000 people displaced. And that's just what they could document. What makes this worse is the complete failure of security forces. Witnesses report calling police hours before attacks, but police either arrive too late or don't come at all. Some are allegedly in cahoots with the attackers. The situation continues to deteriorate. Some states like Benue and Taraba have banned open grazing entirely, forcing herders to use ranches they can't afford. This has only pushed the conflict down south into neighboring states. Former President Buhari's government supposedly tried various solutions, including the controversial rural settlement program for herders, but most initiatives have failed due to poor planning and lack of community consultation. The human cost is enormous. Entire communities have been displaced, living in makeshift camps in churches and schools. Agricultural production has declined just as Nigerian population has exploded from 33 million in 1950 to over 200 million today. Nigeria, once a food exporter, now imports most of its staple foods. The conflict has created a vicious cycle. Food insecurity leads to more competition for land, which leads to more violence. So what is the solution? Experts recommend a comprehensive approach. First, real security reforms. Police and military need better training, equipment, and most importantly, accountability. The culture of impunity must end. Second, proper land management. The government needs to establish and protect actual grazing reserves, create cattle ranches, and help herders transition into sedentary livestock farming where possible. Third, address climate change. Reforestation programs, sustainable agriculture, and regional cooperation to fight desertification are essential. Fourth, inclusive dialogue. All stakeholders, herders, farmers, religious leaders, and government officials need to be involved in finding solutions. The Nigerian farmer-herder conflict isn't just about cattle and crops. It's about climate change, government failure, and what happens when traditional system of coexistence break down in the face of modern pressure. With proper leadership, investment, and political will, this conflict can be resolved. Nigeria has the resources and the people to find solution. The question is, does it have the commitment to implement them before more lives are lost? What do you think? Can Nigeria solve this crisis? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe for more deep dives into Nigeria's most important stories.